The way this show can find new ways to up the comedy will never fail to impress me. I mean, when I saw my boy, not once, not twice, but 3 times get sent to the Shadow Realm from a slap, I mean, it's hard not to bust out laughing, being like, I don't understand exactly what I'm watching sometimes with Princess Connect, but you know what? I really wouldn't have it any other way. Last week, arguably the funniest stuff for me, it was my personal comedy jam, but I'm glad to see, once again, some great animation with the action, hinting at Yuki's backstory about what happened with his original adventurer party, but then also just having fun with Foggy and these like messed up memories, making basically adults act like children and babies, and then a dog or biting, and I'm like, what in the actual hell are we doing? But it's so great to see how this show can continue to make the main story hook, which is without a doubt Yuki's kind of backstory and what's going to happen when he fully regains his memories, while simultaneously just having a cute adventurer party going on these random adventures, which most of the time they're not even trying to go on an adventure, but when you get wrapped up in Foggy shenanigans, it's hard not to consider it one. I really enjoyed just like seeing how simple this episode was on paper, where it was just, okay, you know, we're doing nothing all that serious, and then in comes this like memory manipulation, and the fact that we have 2 of my favorite side characters who just continue to be relevant in the best possible ways. Sometimes they pop back up with a new hairdo, and then other times they get slapped by the idol slap, or the idol chop, I think is what they called it. And I absolutely adore just seeing them, you know, basically being treated as like, oh, you know, you're cheating on me and you were gonna leave me, wait, you're not gonna leave me. It just like, the dialogue itself, you could probably watch those 2 by themselves for at least half an episode and it would be comedy gold just seeing what they have to offer. But the whole idea that, you know, you have something that can mess with memories and dreams and things like that, it's a pretty fun concept. It's not the first time I've seen it in anime or games or anything like that. But it's always going to be a recipe for success, even in the most basic of anime. So give it to a quality story like Princess Connect, and you're bound to have a fun time. And the kind of like casual tease at the start of the episode with Yuki kind of like looking up towards the sky, basically like these little insects basically falling on him. He's not even noticing because he's just daydreaming about what's happened to him, because he clearly is changing despite still having the same kind of like almost emotionless gazes, and he has these very basic phrases. And I mean, we still have Kokoro making her X faces when he gets just randomly slammed into oblivion from random civilians. But I love seeing how they're teasing it, and then you'll just be like, okay, that's all we're getting for this episode. We had, you know, the reminder that this is an important plot point, that he is a character despite the almost personality-less kind of persona that he has. And then the end of the episode kicks in and we get like probably the clearest backstory moment in his arc, where you get to see them not fuzzy, not in a blur, but right there as they're looking at the same thing that we're looking at the end of the episode, being like, oh, do we have enough of these gems or whatever they have, the stones, and then something obviously happened, right? And I'm really liking seeing that there clearly was a bunch of connections he had. He clearly lost them, and now he's seemingly made different connections, which is pretty interesting. And I'm not sure exactly where they want to go by the time we reach the finish line of Season 2, because, you know, Princess Connect's not going to stop at Season 2. We'll wait a few years, and we'll come back for Season 3. But I'm curious to see how much they're going to really emphasize on the plot side of things when it comes to Yuki before we do reach that finish line. Are they going to go in the direction of a big cliffhanger? Sequel bait, something like that, or are they just going to have like a couple of episodes before we reach the final episode to make it plot important and then end on a comfy note? It's hard to say, because Princess Connect is kind of a jack of all trades. It doesn't try to be one kind of anime, and I think this episode's a great example of being all different forms of Princess Connect. I mean, we had the action in this episode, which once again, the princess strikes, Yuki powering them all up. The animation, the lighting is probably one of the best points of this show, is when they really go glowing with all the extra effects. It makes them look like powerful anime video game level characters, and you don't get to see that type of attention to detail all too often. You have the generic kind of like simple slice of life scenes, the over-the-top Princess Connect comedy with the idol chops and everything else in between, to even the more serious stuff with Yuki and his personal story, as he just casually have, you know, 2 best girls over here just having, like, the best friendship ever. I mean, just seeing, you know, Peko and Carl just have this connection, because, that guilt of knowing that you're technically betraying the people you love so much, and she's calling you a sister, and what would Yuki be? He'd obviously be the youngest brother. You can see that level of guilt, but you can also see that the more time she spends with them, her loyalty is definitely shifting over to this guild, more so than her master that she's always followed, right? And I love seeing those moments because it really tells you and reminds you that the characters have their own types of guilt, they have their own struggles that they're dealing with, but at the end of the day, they are a guild, they do stick together, and someone else's problems will become their problems. And if, Kara was to ever actually admit to what's going on, despite there maybe being a sense of betrayal, there'd probably be at least one character who would very much respond negatively. They probably would have each other's back, all things considered. And that's the thing that continues to make Princess Connect such a fun adventure, that it really does let every character have the spotlight. And despite, even if you can't even think off the top of your head how many characters there are, my anime list, they have a list of at least 25 characters of just supporting characters listed. The show has a lot of characters, but I think it kind of what makes it feel full of life, right? Because you definitely have your main, reoccurring characters, and your main characters, and your pretty good side characters. But there is a lot of characters that will pop up for maybe an episode's worth of content at best. And then you might not see them again for a dozen episodes. But it doesn't feel like that's a negative thing, right? Because they do feel like their own person. They have a unique individual personality when they appear. And given the fact that we're in a world that functions with these guild systems, right? They go on quests and it's a giant city. You should just have people that will pop up randomly, and sometimes characters we've already come to know will then in return have characters connected to them that we'll get to know a dozen episodes later. And that's what really makes Princess Connect feel so charming, is that it doesn't really need to be focused on any particular person or story. You can have these simplistic one-episode stories that are one and done, as you can simultaneously have some of the most heavy stuff as we had a couple weeks back in this show. And Princess Connect, it just rocks it. It knows what it wants to be, and the fact that you can't necessarily predict what an episode's gonna be, especially in one like this, where it literally has every style minus something super dramatic. I think the most dramatic thing you could say happened is actually just, the realization of Yuki kind of thinking more about his memories and the giant slap to the face. But we didn't have any, we didn't see any deaths or anything like that, right? But still, it really did feel like it kind of blended everything, and it kind of says to me anyway, that because it blended every style, that within the next episode or two, I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if we do have something a lot more serious in the pipeline, but then again, you never quite know what this show wants to be. Thoughts and feelings, though, on this week's episode. I thought this was a great one as per usual, but I'm glad it kind of gave me the funniness and the action-packed, while also simultaneously giving me more on Yuki, a character who didn't really have that much of a connection with in the first season, but damn, season 2 is really making me more interested in his story, all things considered. But thoughts if you have any, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.